I want to move on to doing some videos on some different topics in the next few weeks, but I have a couple of more things I want to say about the way that the media has insisted, since this trial ended, has insisted on pounding us over the head as hard as they can with this message that Amber Heard has been the victim of a terrible and extensive harassment campaign on YouTube and on Twitter and on Reddit and on TikTok. And of course, just this week, you can look at my other video that I did on this topic yesterday, Bot Sentinel, which is looking shadier by the minute, came out with their big report, which was really a nothing report. Basically, to summarize the report, there are Johnny Depp supporters, there are lots of Johnny Depp supporters, and they like to use hashtags, and they like to criticize Amber Heard. That's basically the summary. Oh yeah, and there are 14 tweets that Bot Sentinel was able to identify that really went over the line. That's the big report, all right? And it really has become clear that the media, you know, I did not realize, I have to say, I did not realize in the lead up to this trial and when this trial started, I did not realize that the media not only were not going to see the truth about Amber Heard, even when it's in front of their faces, not only that, but that they were going to be so angered and so pissed off at A, the fact that they totally lost control of the narrative and that no one gave a shit about what they had to say on this topic, and B, that their precious MeToo ideology, the idea of believe women 100%, it's falling apart. And also, not only all of this, but the fact that there are actually people out there, like YouTubers like that Umbrella guy and a number of others of us, who are to some degree or other benefiting from this. Not benefiting from this case as much as benefiting from the media's neglect of this case. And if the media want to look at the culprit for why that Umbrella guy is getting so many more viewers and has so much and has so much more trust than you and the mainstream media have, well, the reason for that is because he's providing truth. He's providing value for the dollar. So that's why the money's going there. You know, capitalism, it's not that hard to understand, right? There's supply and there's demand. And the reason why some YouTubers are proliferating, why LawTube exploded during this case, is because there's demand for, shockingly enough, for accurate and fair and clear-minded coverage. And so of course they're angry. Of course they're angry, and they're spewing all of this anger at us in every way possible, and like some kind of a schoolmarm scold, they're trying to hit us over the hand with a metaphorical ruler. And that's all that this Bot Sentinel BS is. That's all these different articles that mimic one another about, oh, the harassment, and oh, it's a sad day for women, and oh, social media. I saw an article yesterday. It said social media users should be alarmed by what happened in the wake of the Johnny Depp trial. Oh, really? We should all be alarmed. Come on. Now, there's something very Orwellian about this attempt by the media and their associates to change history. And the trial has just happened, right? Like, as people would say, like, the body's not even cold, so to speak, to use metaphor. But the trial just happened. All right. And already the media are furiously in every way possible trying to deconstruct it for the public and trying to gaslight us and assure us that what we saw, we didn't see, and how it seemed to us, it wasn't really, and that we are just not competent enough to be able to understand or interpret what we witnessed in that trial. And if you've ever read George Orwell's 1984, you know, people talk about 1984 a lot, and rightly so, because Orwell did a fascinating job of examining authoritarian and totalitarian mechanisms. These authoritarian, totalitarian governments and structures, one of the most significant things that they engage in is control of the media and control of media narrative and propaganda and, as we know, repression and persecution of a free press. And one of the things that Orwell so astutely noted in 1984 was that one of the primary mechanisms, or one of the primary goals of a totalitarian, authoritarian government is to rewrite the understanding of the past, to rewrite history, to deny history. And so if you've read 1984, you know that the occupation of the main character, Winston Smith, his job is to actually rewrite history. He works for the government. He works in this awful, drab government building, and all day long he is involved in the rewriting of history and propaganda. Now, what's so Orwellian about what we've experienced and are experiencing with the media reaction to this trial and the dominant blue check narrative is that not only are they trying to tell us that Amber Heard is being harassed, but they're trying to tell us that history did not happen, that Johnny Depp was not abused, that the things that we heard on those tapes we didn't hear, right? I saw a post today, actually, someone was posting this on Twitter. They had this great list of all of the different things that the media are trying to convince us that we didn't see or that we didn't hear, right? And what they are trying to do is they're trying to rewrite history in an Orwellian way. Because if you rewrite history and then you push that message on people over and over and over, they know that some people are going to buy it. And that the more time goes by, the more people forget what really happened, the more people kind of latch on to these dumb prescribed notions. And so this Orwellian sense in which the mainstream media and the blue check marks and Bot Sentinel and all of these different groups are trying to basically harass us, harass the public, harass Depp supporters into forgetting the past, forgetting the truth. It's very much like at the end of 1984 when the main character is being interrogated. He's been caught and he's being interrogated. And the guy asks him, something like, how many fingers am I holding up? And, he would be plainly holding up maybe like 2. And the main character would say 2. And he would like, no, there's not 2, there's 3. And he would torture him until the guy would could finally say, okay, you got me. You got me. And what happens in 1984 is that they torture this main character who has decided that he is not hip to the government program and he doesn't really believe what the government is selling. And he's having these subversive thoughts and he's engaging in some subversive activities, or disruptive, as Bot Sentinel would say. I put in my Twitter handle on Bot Sentinel, their website. You can go in there and you can put your Twitter handle in there, and then they'll tell you your Twitter score as to whether or not you're behaving on Twitter. I don't recommend you do this, actually, because apparently the organization is kind of shady and they'll sell some of your information or your IP address. Or I don't know, but I'm just saying I did it. And I got a disruptive score. I was disruptive, right? So the main character in 1984, he becomes disruptive. And so what do? They kidnap him, they torture him, they gaslight him, they put him through this extensive programming until not only does he tell them what they want to hear, but he actually believes it. He's been so psychologically worn down. And I'll tell you, sorry to give you a spoiler, but at the very end of 1984, the main character, this is the last scene in 1984, the main character is crying because he loves the government so much. That's literally what happens at the end. He falls in love with the government. He falls in love with Big Brother, and he's crying tears of joy because he's been completely brainwashed. It's a very tragic ending. And I really do feel like the media and these blue check marks and some of these different activists, they are engaging in a kind of a system of brainwashing. And they're trying to hit us from all directions, right? And we have the mainstream media, all of these different articles coming out scolding us, but not just scolding, saying it didn't happen the way you saw it. What you saw, you didn't see. What Amber said, she didn't say. And by the way, if you try to tell the truth on Twitter, we are going to come after you. We're going to lie about you. We're going to say that you're doing terrible things. We're going to misrepresent you. We are going to persecute you. So this kind of bizarre persecution and rewriting of history, this attempt to rewrite history and brainwash the public that saw so quickly through Amber Heard. I mean, the public was hip to her, man. As soon as that trial started, right? Pretty much as soon as the trial started and people could assess for themselves what was going on, that's when you started to see, after that first week or so, you started to see these different people on, on TikTok and Reddit and so forth, putting these videos out making fun of Amber Heard. A lot of this stuff really didn't pick up until the trial had been going on for just a bit, because people watched it. It was televised. They watched it. They saw the truth. Right? They saw clearly which side was credible. They made that calculation and they got it right. And now, like in 1984, the powers that be are trying to erase that history. Now, one of the most interesting themes in 1984 is the manipulation of language. In fact, there's a part of the book that even provides a kind of a dictionary and a kind of explanation of the language in this authoritarian state in the book. And what the book explains is that, in Orwell's story, this authoritarian government, one of the first things that they did was they changed the language, because they correctly understood that if people could not use language to properly describe things, then they could no longer have access to those meanings, right? If you don't have a word for freedom, can you even really use the concept, right? Think about it. There's really not a concept. There is seldom a situation where we will have a feeling or a thought that is not tied to words. We're constantly talking in our heads. If you slow down and you analyze it, most of the feelings that you have, most of the thoughts by far are tied to words. And so if we don't have words, then it's very difficult to have concepts. And that's exactly what happens in 1984. They eliminate most of the vocabulary that people can use. They outlaw a lot of words, and there are mandates against using lots of expressions. They streamline the language, the dictionary, down to almost nothing. And by doing so, what they try to ensure is not only that people cannot use these words to speak certain things, but also that after a while of not having the tools, not using the tools, not using the words and the phrases, that after a while, the ideas itself, they will die. So you outlaw the usage of the term freedom, right? And then after a while, people don't talk about freedom anymore. And then after a while, they don't even think about it anymore. Now, what does that have to do with what we've just been through with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, the situation? And what we're seeing with the evolution of MeToo, with all of these shady, suspicious cases, such as the Marilyn Manson case, where it turns out Marilyn Manson is innocent and is being falsely accused. And as we know, there are lots of other cases of falsely accused men right now. What we see is that the MeToo movement and the mainstream media are seeking to redefine words or use words in ways that are problematic. For example, you see the word sexual coercion coming up a lot now. You see the word being used by a number of Cuomo accusers. You see the word being used by a number of Marilyn Manson accusers. You see it used by people who defend Amber Heard. What does sexual coercion mean? Well, all that it really means, if we're thinking about a very strict definition, is that someone talks someone into doing something, or through some mechanism pressures or encourages someone to do something. That is not assault. That is not physical force. If you say to me, hey, if you want to be my girlfriend, then you're going to have to do something kinky, and I agree to it, you have not assaulted me. It is only assault when I say, no, I don't want to do that, and you force me to do that, or when you threaten me with violence in order to get me to do that. Otherwise, consent is given, all right? Even when not affirmatively expressed. And so this sort of the squishiness though, because sexual coercion, it sounds really bad, right? And so what we're seeing increasingly in a number of these lawsuits, in a number of these so-called victim testimonials, and in a lot of the propaganda that's coming out of this movement and coming from Amber Heard supporters often, is this re-understanding or this reimagining of the language where now sexual coercion is on par with assault. I talked about the case of Dr. David Sabatini. Well, the woman who accused him and caused him to lose his job and now is countersuing him, she doesn't claim at any point that he raped her. What she says is he coerced me into having sex with him, which if you actually read her lawsuit, what that comes down to is she claims he applied some verbal pressure. And yet that is set up now as being on par with assault. The meaning of terms are changing. Assault, rape, that used to be understood as something very violent. You tell someone you were raped and they would have the idea that you were being, held down or you're at knife point or whatever, right? But what we're seeing with a number of these narratives now, not all, but a number of these narratives that are emerging in the wake of MeToo and modern feminism is women claiming that they were in some way assaulted or sort of raped in the sense that, no, I wasn't physically forced, and no, he didn't threaten my life, but oh, he applied a lot of pressure. Or in the case of Hugh Hefner's accusers, the Shannon twins, who were very, very happy, who always appeared very, very happy to be on his show and everything, doing reality TV when they were with him. But now they regret their time with Hefner, and they say, well, he didn't rape us, but he used coercive measures. In other words, he had a big checkbook, he had this really nice house, there was the cachet of the Playboy thing, and through all of that, he enticed us into and persuaded us to have sex with him. That's what it comes down to. Ladies, in these situations, that's where you have to do the sometimes difficult thing and use your brain and assert yourself. Hugh Hefner wants me to move into his house. Well, on the one hand, he's got a lot of money and that would be a lot of press exposure for me, and maybe I could even be on the reality show, et cetera, et cetera. But on the other hand, he's this really nasty old guy. Well, I think I'm going to give it a shot. Oh, wait, he coerced me. Oh, no. No, ma'am. That's not how it works. How it works is you make a decision and then you take responsibility for that decision. And if you don't want to sleep with the dirty, crusty old man, then you know what you do? You say, not interested. All right? The vast majority of us who know the truth, we need to engage in our own kind of civil disobedience in a way, which means that we are not going to shut up about the truth, and we are not going to forget the truth, and we're not going to allow others to forget it either. All right, everybody, I'm going to be moving away from this topic for just a bit, getting to some other stuff in the upcoming weeks. I've got more on the Marilyn Manson case. I've got some videos about Elvis coming out I think you'll find interesting, and some philosophy topics. And I'm going to be talking about some other Me Too cases. People have been wanting me to get into the Army Hammer thing. I guess it's time. I'm going to do it. So like and subscribe. And as always, I appreciate your tips. The PayPal and Patreon links are below. Bye.